If you have ever driven Interstate 10 through southern Arizona between Tucson and Benson, you've probably spotted something strange. A line of yellow Union Pacific diesel locomotives stretching along the desert floor for 3 miles. Nearly 300 of them, parked end to end on a siding. Some freshly painted and others covered in graffiti, not moving, not pulling freight, baking in the Arizona sun. But why would one of the largest freight railroads in North America leave hundreds of millions of dollars in equipment sitting idle in the Sonoran Desert? These are 10 reasons those locomotives are there. Number 10. The desert preserves machines the way it preserves bones. Arizona isn't a random choice. The same logic that turned Tucson into home of the largest aircraft boneyard on Earth also applies to railroad equipment. About 60 miles northwest of the Benson locomotive line, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base stores over 4,000 retired military aircraft across 2,600 acres of open desert. Everything from retired F-16 fighter jets to massive C-130 cargo planes sits in precise rows on the hard ground, visible from commercial flights landing at Tucson International Airport. The reason is identical for both planes and trains. Low humidity in the 10 to 20% range, annual rainfall of roughly 11 inches, and hard alkaline soil that supports heavy equipment without paved surfaces. Moisture is the enemy of any stored metal machine, and southern Arizona has almost none of it. Rain promotes rust. Humidity accelerates corrosion in electrical systems. Wet soil creates sinking and shifting that damages landing gear and rail trucks alike. The desert eliminates all 3 problems at the same time. Union Pacific's Jeff DeGraff put it plainly when asked about the location. The arid climate means they don't have to worry about rust, rain, or the kind of corrosion that would eat through a locomotive sitting outdoors in the Midwest or Pacific Northwest. The Benson site also offers something practical, a long stretch of available siding track, far enough from active mainline operations that the parked engines don't create bottlenecks for moving freight. Number 9. Each locomotive represents a fortune just sitting still. A modern diesel locomotive costs between $1 million and $3 million depending on its model and configuration. Union Pacific operates roughly 8,000 of these machines across 32,000 miles of track in 23 states. The nearly 300 units parked at Benson alone represent between $300 million and $900 million in hardware. So why leave that kind of investment sitting in the dirt? Because that isn't scrap metal collecting dust. Those are fully functional assets that the railroad intends to use again. They're checked and maintained on a regular schedule even while stored, because when freight demand spikes, the railroad needs them ready to roll within days, not months. Maintenance crews cycle through the Benson site periodically, inspecting diesel engines, checking electrical systems and air brakes, and confirming that each unit can be returned to active service without a full mechanical overhaul. Number 8. A man named Hunter Harrison changed everything. To understand why so many locomotives are parked, you need to understand a concept called Precision Scheduled Railroading, or PSR. It was first introduced in 1993 by a railroad executive named Hunter Harrison, who applied it at Illinois Central and later at Canadian National and CSX. The core idea sounds simple. Move the same amount of freight using fewer rail cars and fewer locomotives by running longer, more efficient trains on tighter schedules. Before PSR, most American railroads used a hub and spoke system. Freight cars would enter a classification yard, get sorted and shuffled onto different trains, sometimes stopping at multiple terminals before reaching their destination. A single car might be touched by 5 or 6 different crews on its journey from origin to delivery. Harrison's model eliminated much of that complexity. Instead of running lots of shorter trains, railroads began assembling fewer, longer trains that moved freight more directly from origin to destination. Cars spent less time sitting in yards and more time rolling on the main line. The result was a revolution in railroad economics. Fewer locomotives, fewer crews, and less terminal infrastructure were required. Wall Street loved it. The operating ratio, a key profitability metric that measures how many cents of every revenue dollar go to expenses, dropped at every railroad that adopted PSR. Investors responded by pouring money into rail stocks, and within a few years, every major Class 1 railroad in North America had either adopted PSR or announced plans to. Number 7. Union Pacific bet the company on a plan called Unified Plan 2020. In October of 2018, Union Pacific began rolling out its own version of precision scheduled railroading under the name Unified Plan 2020. The stated goals were aggressive: reduce car dwell time in yards, increase train lengths, improve asset utilization, and drive the operating ratio, which measures what percentage of revenue goes to expenses, down towards 60% or lower. Within a year, the results were staggering. By the end of 2019, Union Pacific was using 1/3 fewer locomotives and cars to move nearly the same volume of freight as before the plan launched. The railroad stored approximately 3,100 locomotives, roughly 40% of its entire fleet. That's more than 3 out of every 8 engines the company owned, sitting idle somewhere on the network. Train lengths increased by 15 to 21% across different corridors, with some trains stretching 2 to 3 miles long, and the operating ratio hit a quarterly record of 59.5%. In financial terms, it was a triumph, but in human terms, the picture was far more complicated. Number 6. 5,000 workers paid the price for those parked locomotives. Every stored locomotive represents crew members who no longer have an engine to operate and mechanics who no longer have a machine to maintain. By the end of 2019, roughly 5,000 Union Pacific employees were either furloughed or placed in alternate work status. That wasn't a small number. It represented a significant share of the railroad's operating workforce, and similar cuts were happening at every Class Y railroad adopting precision-scheduled railroading. Across the industry, the numbers told the same story. Since 2016, total employment across the Class 1 railroads fell by roughly 25%, according to data submitted to the Surface Transportation Board. The Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and other rail unions were blunt about what they saw happening. Dennis Pierce, president of the Engineers Union, pointed out that while worker productivity had never been better and the railroad was enjoying multi-billion-dollar quarterly profits, employment levels were heading in the opposite direction. The unions raised safety concerns as well. Longer trains meant more strain on infrastructure that wasn't designed for them. Signal maintainers reported that their territories had grown while the time allowed for inspections had shrunk, because dispatchers were reluctant to slow trains on a fixed schedule. Carmen, the workers who inspect freight cars, described being pressured to complete brake checks at the pace of 60 seconds per car, a tempo they called unsafe. Congressional hearings were held. Union witnesses testified that railroads valued getting trains moving above all else, including the safety of the people operating them. The debate over whether precision-scheduled railroading improved railroading or hollowed it out is far from settled. Number 5. Storing a locomotive is more involved than parking a car. You can't just walk away from a diesel locomotive the way you leave a car in a driveway. The preparation process has several critical steps. First, all fluids that could freeze must be drained. Most locomotives use plain tap water with corrosion inhibitors in their radiator systems rather than antifreeze, because water transfers heat more efficiently. In a place like Benson, where temperatures stay mild, freezing is rarely a concern, but the draining protocol is standard regardless of location. Second, a cover is placed over the engine's exhaust stack to prevent rainwater, debris, or wildlife from accumulating inside the system. Third, the cab is locked and secured against vandalism. In 2009, BNSF Railway tried an experimental approach at its Topeka storage facility, shrink-wrapping entire locomotives in plastic from the frame up. The idea was to seal out all moisture. It didn't work. Condensation built up so badly inside the wrapped cabs that the program was abandoned. The lesson was clear enough. The desert does not need human help to preserve metal. It only needs space, sunlight, and the absence of water. If you are finding this interesting, hit subscribe. We cover the engineering, the economics, and the forgotten stories behind American railroads every week. Number 4. Arizona has become a graveyard for things that might come back to life. How did a stretch of southern Arizona desert become one of America's largest parking lots for expensive machines? After World War II ended, the military needed somewhere to park thousands of surplus aircraft. Tucson's Davis-Monthan base was chosen in 1946, and within months, over 600 B-29 Superfortress bombers and 200 C-47 Skytrain transports were lined up in the desert dust. The base became the nation's primary storage center for military aircraft in 1964, when about 1,000 Navy planes were transferred there from a depot near Phoenix. The inventory peaked at more than 6,000 aircraft in 1973 as the Vietnam War wound down. Today, the facility holds roughly 4,400 aircraft across 80 different types, maintained by about 550 civilian employees. Some of those aircraft will never fly again. Others get pulled out of storage, refurbished, and returned to active duty or sold to allied nations. The railroad industry adopted the same principle decades ago, and for exactly the same reason. Store your expensive assets where nature does half the preservation work for free. The locomotives at Benson aren't being scrapped. They're sleeping. And like the planes at Davis-Monthan, they can be woken up when the mission requires it. Number 3. Satellite companies watch these trains to predict the economy. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. A company called Ursa Space Systems began using synthetic aperture radar, a satellite imaging technology that works through clouds and darkness, to monitor the Benson storage site from orbit. Their reasoning was simple. The number of locomotives sitting idle at a location like Benson rises when the economy weakens and falls when demand recovers. By tracking the length of that 3-mile line over time, they could create a near real-time proxy for freight demand and broader economic health. It's the kind of data that hedge funds and commodity traders find valuable, because changes in locomotive storage can signal shifts in industrial production weeks before official government statistics catch up. When Union Pacific's Chief Operating Officer Jim Vena told investors in April of 2020 that the company had stored additional locomotives as freight volumes declined during the early months of the pandemic, satellite imagery confirmed it before the earnings call happened. The parked locomotives at Benson had become an economic indicator visible from space. Number 2. The line grows and shrinks with the rhythm of American commerce. The Benson storage site isn't static. Locomotives move in and out constantly, following the cycles of the national economy. During the 2008 recession, roughly 5,000 locomotives were mothballed across all Class I railroads. Union Pacific alone stored 2,100 units, about 25% of its fleet. When the economy recovered, hundreds of engines were pulled back into service. Union Pacific reactivated 650 locomotives in one stretch to handle surging demand on its southern network, particularly in Texas. Locomotive builders like General Electric and Progress Rail saw the recovery coming and began planning for new orders, and GE Transportation and Wabtec announced an $11 billion merger in 2018, partly on the assumption that railroads would need fresh power. Then Unified Plan 2020 arrived and sent the storage numbers climbing again, this time driven by efficiency rather than recession. The COVID pandemic layered another wave of storage on top of that, as freight volumes dropped sharply in early 2020. Through it all, the Benson line expanded and contracted like a barometer made of steel and diesel fuel. Union Pacific moves its stored locomotives in and out of the facility regularly, which is why the railroad asks anyone who spots the line from the highway to keep their distance and never approach the tracks. Number 1. The real question is what these locomotives say about railroading itself. Those 300 engines in the Arizona desert aren't relics. They're a physical record of the choices American railroads have made over the past decade. The The unified plan and precision scheduled railroading proved that the industry could move the same freight with dramatically fewer resources. Operating ratios fell, profits climbed, and shareholders were rewarded. But the parked locomotives also represent something else. They are the spare capacity that was once built into the system for resilience. When demand spiked unexpectedly, when a natural disaster disrupted a corridor, when a harvest came in heavier than forecast, those extra engines were what kept freight moving. So what happens when the spare capacity has been optimized away? The tension between efficiency and resilience showed itself clearly during the supply chain crisis of 2021 and 22, when railroads struggled to add capacity fast enough to meet surging demand. Some of the engines parked at Benson and similar sites around the country were brought back online during that period. But the process of reactivating stored locomotives is not instant. Units need inspection, fluid refills, brake tests, and crew assignments before they can pull a single car. The process can take anywhere from a few days for well-maintained units to several weeks for engines that have sat for years. Meanwhile, Union Pacific and other railroads have invested in modernizing their fleets. Older locomotives are being upgraded with newer, more fuel-efficient engines that produce fewer emissions. The improved power means each reactivated unit can haul significantly more tonnage than the older engine it replaced, which further reduces the number of locomotives needed overall. Whether the railroad industry struck the right balance between efficiency and resilience is a question that doesn't have a clean answer. The locomotives at Benson are ready. Their engines can be started, their fluids refilled, their brakes tested. They can be pulling freight within days if the call comes. The line sits in the desert, visible from the highway, halfway between a parking lot and a promise. The desert around Benson is quiet at night. No idling engines, no switching crews, no air brakes hissing in the dark. 300 locomotives lined up under the stars, waiting. They've been waiting through recessions, through pandemics, through corporate restructurings that change the rules of an industry older than any living person. And every time someone assumes those engines are finished, the railroad pulls a few hundred back into service and sends them thundering down the main line again. The line gets shorter for a while. Then something shifts in the economy and it grows back. That is the rhythm of American freight railroading. It has been for more than 150 years. And if you happen to drive Interstate 10 through southern Arizona sometime soon, look south. The locomotives are still there.